Okay, drum roll, please. Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to be here. My name is Liz Kelly, and I am the founder of Goody PR and an author and a huge fan of WITI, and was in the San Jose conference last time when we did it in person. So it's great to be here virtually. So today we have a great keynote address with two great speakers. The keynote is unapologetically, let's see if I can say that again, unapologetically, I can't say it, ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. And the two speakers, the first one we have is Shellye Archambeau, and she is the former CEO of Metric Stream, and she writes a blog that provides career advice. She's a Fortune 500 board director and also an author. So thank you, Shellye, for being here. And then we also have Dr. Crystal Rawls, and Dr. Rawls is a recognized voice in the workforce development practices. So welcome to Shellye and Dr. Rawls.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us. Should we just go on and launch in?
Let's do it.
Looks like it. Looks like it. I'm so glad to be here with you today, Shellye. It's just amazing to get this opportunity to meet you. So I do have quite a few questions for you, but I want to start with your introduction, right? I did a little bit of research about you, and to say that you write a blog is one thing, but you are absolutely amazing. So I'm so honored to be here, right? I'm just so honored to be here. So please, audience, excuse me if I gush a little bit, just a little bit, right? But Fortune 500 board member, CEO of multiple different spaces, right? Transitioning, Deloitte Technology, Fast 500. I mean, wow. Wow. So I want to just take a pause and say, wow, great to meet you. It's absolutely amazing to be here and speak with you today. So let's get to it. The book, right? Unapologetically, oh, wow, even I started stumbling. Unapologetically ambitious, take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. What a powerful mouthful. Tell us a little bit about it.
Absolutely. So first of all, just on the title, when I finally came up with the title, Unapologetically Ambitious, I actually hesitated on using it just for the reason that you've shown. It actually is a mouthful to say, but I couldn't come up with a better title to really describe what message I was trying to give, which is that everyone deserves to be ambitious, and no one should have to apologize for it. Because throughout my career, Crystal, many times I was told I was ambitious, and it wasn't necessarily meant as a compliment. And when you think about it, what is ambition? Ambition just means there is something in the future that you are striving towards and working towards. That's ambition, right? It doesn't mean you step all over people, take no prisoners, right? Act like you have no sense in terms of how you treat people. That's just being rude. That has nothing to do with ambition. So when I wrote the book, I wanted to let people know that for many of us, the odds are not in our favor to achieve what we want to achieve. I mean, WITI, the reason there's an organization called WITI is because there's such an underrepresentation in tech, right? It's improving, but it's such an underrepresentation. So just because the odds aren't in your favor, and they definitely were not in mine, doesn't mean that you can't achieve your aspiration. And I wanted to share how to improve your odds. What are some of the things that you can actually do right now, today, in terms of actually making it more likely that you will achieve the things that you want to achieve? And I wanted to share that, life is hard. People don't tell you life is hard, Crystal. They tell you a whole lot of things when you're coming up, but they don't tell you life is hard. And so what happens is it starts getting hard, and we think, oh man, this is hard for me. It's so easy for everybody else. I must not be cut out for this. Not the case. Not the case. It's hard for everyone. They just don't tell you that. So when it gets hard, just get more help, but keep going. And so the book was meant to share. Here's how to ask for help. Here's how to get mentors, right? And I do it all through story. It's not a do this, do this, do this. It is a, here's what I faced. Here's how I handle it. Here's what I faced. Here's how I handle it. Here's how I wish I handled it, right? All those kinds of things. So that was the purpose of writing the book.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And so you mentioned, right, you said you wanted to let people know what your experience was. As you were thinking about this book, who were you thinking about? Who's your audience? Who did you want to most speak to?
I really wanted to speak to professionals that are in their, call it 20s and 30s. That was kind of my target. But at the same time, I felt it could help people broadly. But the reason I was really targeting that phase is because, you know, from 25 to 35, most people make the most critical decisions in terms of their impact on the rest of their life trajectory. 25 to 35, most people decide who they're going to marry, where they're going to live, what industry they're going to start working in, what kind of job they're going to take. Are they going to have kids? I mean, all these, in this one little decade, we make all these decisions that, boom, set us on a path. And most people make them without being very strategic about them. And I wanted to share that if you're just a little strategic about how you make your decisions, really putting plans in place and working towards them, you can actually set yourself up on a higher slope to be able to go get what you need. Are you able to hear me?
You are a little paler than I like, and I'm thinking about turning off my space heater so I can hear you better.
Okay.
I think there might have been an issue with Dr. Rawls' sound. But if you
Shellye?
You're on mute right now.
From you,
We can't.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm
There
sorry.
you go.
Apparently it was me who lost sound. We're fine, so I'm sorry, but I'm loath to miss a word of this. So please do
No
continue.
problem.
My apologies.
No problem. So no, it was really just sharing the fact that because people make so many decisions in that decade, that's when I really wanted to share, here's how to be strategic about it so that you could actually set yourself up on a slope to achieve what you want to achieve. Because too many people wake up and they're 35, 41, 52, and they're like, gosh, I'm just not where I thought I would be. So I wanted to help improve the odds that you actually are where you want to be. Because if I can do it, my father didn't have a college degree, we moved around all the time, 7 different states before I was in high school. I was always that new kid, right? Living in challenging environments. I was bullied as a kid. I mean, trust me, if I can do this, you can do it.
Thank you. Wow, that's really a powerful word. So tell us about this career strategy. Give us those tips that'll help our guests, right, emulate your strategy.
Yeah, you know, my big message is really about being intentional. And the key to being intentional is to set some goals. Even if you're not exactly sure what you want to do, it doesn't matter. Just pick a goal that's in the future and moving you forward, right? Because when you pick a goal, then you can then ask yourself, I'll give you an example. So I wanted to be a CEO, right? So I asked myself, okay, what has to be true for me to become a CEO? Because I didn't know. So I did the research. And by the way, research is homework. Homework doesn't stop in school. I still do homework to this day, right? It just means doing the research so that you know what you're facing and what you need to do. So I did the research. Who are the CEOs? Now, this is back in the early 80s, right? Who are the CEOs? Well, goodness, all the CEOs, most of them were married, had stayed-at-home spouse. They moved around a lot, right? A lot of them, in terms of their backgrounds, had business degrees, et cetera. So I said, okay, I need to go get the best credential I can get because I don't see, none of the people I looked at back then looked like me, even no females, no African-Americans, right, the whole bit. And so I got the best credential I could get. I picked technologies and industry because industries that are growing have companies that are growing, and companies that are growing never have enough resources. So if you're good at what you do, you can move forward faster, right? That's why I picked tech. And then when I picked tech, I picked IBM. Again, do the research. Okay, who are the CEOs at IBM? Well, it turned out they all started out in sales. So I got my first job in sales. not because I wanted to be a salesperson, but because I figured there must be skills that you gain being a salesperson that sets you up for being a CEO, right? It's learning what is that path to power. So those are just some of the examples, right? You set a goal, then you ask yourself what has to be true to achieve it. And then you do the things that make it true for you. And that becomes your plan, step by step. But here's the key. A lot of people set goals, Crystal, and some people put plans in place. But I find very few people make decisions every day, consistent with their goals, right? And the plan they have. And that's why they wake up and I'm just not where I thought I would be. And being consistent really means that as you make decisions, even though they seem small, right? They're setting you up for the future. And let me just give you a quick example, if that's okay. You know, let's see, I'll pick this one. When I was at IBM and I wanted to be a CEO, and I looked to say, okay, who are the people that report to the CEO? I'm now a junior exec kind of level. And it turned out every single one of them had done an international assignment. Not just international, but most of them had gone to Japan. And I'm talking about the line executives. I didn't know what was magic about that, but it didn't matter. I started telling people when they say, hey, Shellye, you know, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. I say, I want to go to Japan. I want to go to Japan. I told everybody I want to go to Japan. All right. Less than 2 years later, I was in Japan, right? Running a multi-billion-dollar division. Now, it wasn't just because I told people. I also executed, did well, whatever. But I let people know that that's what I wanted to do. People can't read your mind. And I didn't know I wanted to do it until I'd done the research to find out that was a key step that, by the way, nobody tells you. In business, as you are moving forward your career, you'll get your job description, but nobody lays out the roadmap. You have to figure out the roadmap by doing the research, talking to people about what they did in their careers, and figuring out where the current of power is. All of this I talk about in my book, and I talk about how to do it.
Okay, so what I got here is key steps, get Shellye's book, and keep all the tips, right? So let us make sure we get that one first. I love this because my daughter has taken 3 years of Japanese, so I'm gonna tell her, get Shellye's book as number 2 as well. All right, right, and be intentional. Look at the pathways, right? So I did hear you say, right, there's a difference between the real and then the ideal. And we have to look at what that difference is and maybe target that, right?
Right.
Awesome, thank you, okay. And so that brings me to, I told you I did a little bit of fangirling once I realized I was gonna get to interview you. And I saw an amazing interview. By the way, folks, it's on YouTube, but you were speaking at Spelman in a session called Courageous Conversations. And I live between this world of strategy and creativity, right? So what stuck out to me was you said, I learned what that pathway was, and then I ruthlessly prioritized. And that really stuck out to me because I prioritize every day and I went ruthlessly. Do I do that though? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, ruthlessly. And I picked that word on purpose because I am, and it's really tied to my whole view around, you know, this work, what people tend to call work-life balance. I actually hate the term work-life balance. And let me explain why I hate the term. What is a balance? A balance is a fixed structure, right? Pole, crossbar, 2 weights on each side that never move because they're in balance, right? It's static. Well, Crystal, I don't know about you, but my life's not static. I don't know a person out there who has a static life. My life does this. Things happen. You're working along, life happens, work happens, this happens, health happens. I mean, right? All these things happen. And I'm going to be judged on whether or not I'm holding everything in perfect balance at all times. That's ridiculous. I have enough to feel guilty about, right? So I get rid of that. I'm like, no. To me, it's all about work-life integration, which means I take my work priorities, I take my personal priorities. I put those 2 things together and I prioritize ruthlessly. And what that means is I get done what's important to me in my life. It also means there are going to be things at the bottom of that list I'm not going to be able to do. So I've got to learn how to live with it not being done or find somebody else to do it. And the only way that I have found that I can actually do that, because it all sounds good. You're probably thinking, oh, Shellye, of course. I mean, it sounds good, but who actually can do that, right? The only way to actually do it is for you to decide what you are willing to be judged on. All right? Listen to those words. The world wants to judge us on everything, especially women. They want to judge us on not just how we behave, how we look, what quality of our work, right? How we dress, what we drive, how our home looks, right? How our kids act, how the kids look, what kind of educations we do. I mean, you name it. They want to judge us on all these things. And because we feel judged on all these things, we want to do all these things really well because we feel like they reflect on us, right? No wonder we go crazy. We go crazy. People walk into your house and they'll say, oh, Laura, what a beautiful home you have. They rarely say, oh, Sam, what a beautiful home you have, right? It's usually focused on women, so we feel judged. That's why we're running around straightening things up. And our husband's like, what are you bothering with, right? Because we feel judged. So the key is you decide what you're willing to be judged on. And let me just give you a really sample to show you I absolutely did this. My daughter was born with thick, curly hair. The best way to have that hair look nice and neat was you brush, comb, and you braided her hair. Well, my late husband, he was a former football player, all 6'2", big hands. Did he know how to part and braid and twist little girls' hair? No. Did he need to learn? You bet he did. There was no way, right? Prioritize. No way I'm going to do that every day, nor could I. So what did that mean? That meant for the first 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks that he was doing her hair, she left home looking pretty jacked up. I mean, crooked parts, braids coming unravel, a thick one here, thin one here, right? I mean, he's learning. Could I go redo her hair? No, that would demoralize him. He is trying, right? Now, here's the key. When she showed up at school, did other parents look at her? Did teachers look at her and think, where is her mother? How could they let her out of the house looking like that? Of course they did. Did I care? Nope. Nope. They don't know me. They don't know our family. They don't know our priorities. It was more important that he learned how to do her hair than it was that she looked nice and neat, because guess what? She's 3. She doesn't care what she looks like, right? It has zero impact on her. So when I say you decide what to be judged on and the rest, let it go. And if you want to, claim that you've let it go. You know what? My house is not going to be neat. It will always be clean, but it's not going to be neat. That's just how I live. Welcome, and tell me if you want a warm environment, right? You can acknowledge it. But all I'm saying is decide what you're willing to be judged on. Prioritize ruthlessly. And that's how you have time to do what's truly important in your life.
Thank you so much for that. And I hear you. I hear you totally, right? It sounds like you had a wonderful support team as well. I want to address the chat space. So those of you who have questions, we will address them. Feel free to continue dropping them in the chat. And so Shellye, I'm going to pause on some of the, because I could ask questions all day. I swear I could, but we don't have all day. So I'm going to pause my personal questions and address a couple in the chat. So for example, I asked who your target audience was, and you indicated they were, the young people, 25 to 35. Let's get you on the right track. Carolyn asks, what about when you're 50 and 70? How would you respond to that, right? For the older people, or right, a little more experienced person.
Absolutely. So here's the interesting thing. It is never too early to start planning, but it's also never too late. A friend of mine at the age of 51, who had never gotten a college degree, not only went and got her college degree, she got her master's, and she's now a clinical psychologist at the ripe old age of 67. And loving it, loving it. It is never too late to plan. Figure out what you want to do, put the plan in place, go make the trade-off, and go make it happen. So that's what I would tell them.
And I'm going to piggyback on that, right? So I had a whole career before I went into education, and I decided one day that I was going to get a PhD, but I was already 33. And here I sit with said PhD. So it's not too late, right? I think I like I said, just piggybacking off of what Shellye's saying, you set a target goal and set your strategy to execute, and let the naysayers do whatever they have time to do, because clearly if they have time to naysay, they're not being strategic. And so there is another question from, let's see, this is from Liz. What's a good way to say I'm sorry if something does not go according to plan without saying I apologize?
Yeah, I love this question, because here's what I have found. I have found that women in particular apologize all the time. And maybe 5, maybe 10% of the times we apologize, it's because we actually did something wrong. The other times, it's to make the rest of the world feel better, right? It's to show empathy, show we care, to smooth feathers, ease tensions, right? All those things. We use it like people use salt, right? You sprinkle salt to make things taste a little better. We sprinkle I'm sorry to make the world a little smoother, all right? That's what we do. So we've got to stop doing that. And that's part of why I created the title, Unapologetically Ambitious. So what do? If we're late joining a Zoom, everybody's on a Zoom and we're late, instead of walking in and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I had blah, 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 blah. No, you walk in and say, thanks so much for your patience. I know you had to wait a couple minutes for me. You acknowledged it, right? Things happen. It's not your fault, right? The time to say I'm sorry is when you really feel it is your fault that something has happened. If you're working on a team project and miss the deadline or something comes in late, right? You come up and whatever you're presenting to say, listen, our date we were supposed to deliver this was Monday. I know today's Wednesday. We missed the target. Here are the 3 things that we learned to make sure that doesn't happen the next time. What did you do? You acknowledged the issue that you missed, right? But at the same time, you talked about how it's a learning experience. You don't go apologize, go lick your wounds and off into the corner because it's all your fault. It rarely is. It's a team effort, right? So those are, hopefully that helps, but those are some of the things. But be judicious on when you say I'm sorry. Use it. You step on somebody's foot, you tell them you're sorry, right? You dump a whole plate of spaghetti on somebody, you are sorry. You absolutely did that. You are sorry.
Right.
Right. But short of that, if it's not your fault, then use a different way of acknowledging what happened, right? You have to acknowledge, because otherwise people think you're not a nice person, right? You have to acknowledge. But
right.
Come up with different terms. We have 10 million words in this language. There's ways to use the word without saying apology.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to acknowledge the participants who are dropping in the room. Yeah, she said that nope with that full chest, right? She's like, no. We appreciate that very much. There's a few mentions in the chat. Here's another question for you, Shellye. What advice do you provide to tread the thin line between assertive and aggressive? All right, considering usually those are words that people use, they perception to label.
Yeah. Right. And here's the key. The key is to find your style. So let me just tell you what worked for me, because I grew up in a male-dominated environment. And, I tell people all the time, if you think about a road, right? Men can walk down any side of the road. They have the entire road in which to operate. Women get a lane. We step out of that lane, bam, right? People of color get that little yellow line that goes right down the middle. All right. So we step a little bit this way, bam, right? So therefore, I learned this. And what I learned was always be professional and polite in what you're saying, right? Be direct and say it. But frankly, I always end up with a smile. So I'll say, Crystal, I actually had higher expectations for the work product that you and your team created. I know you can do better. And I'm confident the next time I'm going to get exactly what we need. Did I deliver a direct message?
Yeah.
Yep. Right? Did I smile at the end and let her know I still believed in her? Yep. Is she walking off thinking I am aggressive? No. If I'm interested in doing something, having a conversation, and I want to be a vice president, right? And I'm not today, and I want to make sure that Crystal knows I want to be a vice president. I'll say something like, Crystal, first of all, I'll say, how am I doing? Crystal, I would love your feedback, right? Do you feel that I'm actually delivering blah, 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 blah? And assuming Crystal says yes, because that's the key, you've got to be delivering. Then you say, great. One day I aspire to be a vice president. Do you have any advice for me on what I can do, what skills I should be focused on building? Now, what's happened? I just let her know I want to be a vice president, didn't I? Did I walk in and say, I expect to be a vice president, so how are you going to help me? No. I told her in a way that was assertive because I told her what it was, but professional. And I actually asked for her help. And in doing that, she's almost compelled to tell me something, right? And when she tells you something, you take the advice and then you thank her after you take the advice. And what I found is if you just keep that going, more than just letting her know what you want, she might actually become a supporter because she feels like she's impacting your growth.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, so we are coming up upon the end. So there's one more question. I want to make sure I get this in here because it's a great question. Thank you, Laura. Can you talk briefly about how you do your planning, like planners, software, to-do lists? I'm a paper and pen type girl. I need a checklist, cross it off. What about you?
Yeah, so I am a paper, I'm paper and pen, but I'm also technology. It's funny, I keep leveraging both. So when I'm brainstorming, all right, I just brainstorm better paper and pencil. When I put together a plan, it's all about, well, I'll give you an example, right? So I'm on the board of Verizon, and I wanted to be chair of the nominating and governance committee of the board. And I was probably a year into the board, maybe two, probably just two, a year or two into the board. And I decided, okay, that's my goal. So then I wrote the goal down. So I wrote it on my paper. I'm like, all right, how do you make this happen? Well, in order to be that, you've got to have supportive leadership, right? Of course, you've got to show that in the boardroom that you also, whether you have a title or not, that you are demonstrating leadership, that you have courage, that people trust you, and you have to create relationship, right? They made a list of what has to be true. Remember that question, what has to be true? Other people would have to support me. They'd have to see me as a leader. They'd have to believe I can do this. I'd have to have the right support of the CEO and the current chair of NomGov. And then I put together my plan. And then I executed, went to put together my plan. I set timelines for each. Okay, I want to do this by this by this, right, etc. And then I take that and I actually put it into my calendar because I have a timeline. You got to have a timeline for doing things. And I check to see how am I doing against it, etc. Anyway, I've been chair of NomGov now for 2.5 years.
Great. Okay, let me see if I got this right now, right? So you asked the question. So Shellye, how did I do with this interview? Did I do okay here?
Yes, indeed.
And assuming we get the positive answer, then you say something like, so I get all of my personal questions answered. Could you possibly chat with me again later soon so that we can answer a few more of the questions?
Let me tell you the best way. And by the way, I tell you, I call it adopting mentors. And I tell you exactly how to do it in the book. The best thing is actually not to ask that as the first question, Crystal, because that gives me a chance to say no, right? Okay, you don't want to give people a chance to say no. So I don't ask them that. What I do instead is like after this session, I drop me a quick note. Shellye, enjoyed blah, blah, blah. Hey, just a quick question. If I were to do an interview again, what question did I not ask that I should? I just want to make sure I'm good at this, right? Well, that's a quick thing. I don't have to think about it, right? I just pop something in. And then what you do is, okay, great. You then do another thing. And maybe a month later, 2 months later, you respond back, hey, I took your advice and it went great, blah, 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 blah. And you drop another quick question. The key is you ask people for something where it takes no investment of time. And then you demonstrate that you're actually listening. Very few people actually listen and act. And if you listen and act and report back, I find most people are then happy to give you time. And then before you know it, they've become an unofficial mentor. And then if you do well, they see you rising, see things happening, they'll start to claim you. Oh yeah, Crystal, oh, I give her advice from time to time, right? Because they're all proud of you. You want everybody to claim you. Anyway, read the book. I tell you exactly how to do it. I've had hundreds of mentors throughout my career, and it was one of the keys of my success.
Well, thank you so much for this 30 minutes. Thank you for giving us so many pearls of wisdom. I am going to turn it back over to, I think, Liz.
Well, thank you so much, Shellye and Dr. Ross. That was so interesting. And I actually looked up Shellye's book, and I just have to share that she